Welcome to Meditations, a Stoic podcast, a 12-episode limited series exploring the writing of Marcus Aurelius. Through this work, we will examine the philosophy of Stoicism, how it applied to the life of Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, and how it applies to our own lives today.
I'm your host, Devin Kivioya, and welcome to the Stoic Podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Jared Poirier.
Here we are again, both feeling a little bit sleepy, I guess, today.
Maybe a little bit, yeah. Maybe not sleepy, just, you know what, you have those days where you feel calm.
Oh, that's good. So, yes, not necessarily sleepy, but calm. I think that being calm is good for the Stoic Podcast after all, so...
It would be really weird if I was angry the whole time.
If this was like a really aggressive Stoic podcast, yeah. Just
kind of shouting at you, being like, God, I hate all of this calmness. It pisses me off. Tell me how you're all so calm or I'll kill your families. You know, it doesn't work. Like,
yeah, but Stoicism isn't without its internal divisions anyways, you know, just because it's Stoic doesn't necessarily mean that it's passive, and doesn't necessarily mean that you can't have your own point of view. And I think you and I are going to have our own points of view on the topic today. We're getting into Book 6 of Meditations, some very interesting philosophical points being made in this chapter. I think we're going to have a lot to talk about, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your views on this one, Devin.
Sounds good. Me too.
All right, so let's dive in here. If you don't mind giving us a little bit of historical background, as we always do, I think it would be really good to talk about this fellow, Antoninus, as he is evoked in Book 6 here of Meditations. As kind of a role model, I guess, or an example of a good leader.
He was Marcus's predecessor, and I mean, he ruled over what was viewed at the time and until now, for the most part, as a golden age. And so, I mean, he's the sort of leader that you'd probably, for the most part, want to emulate. He ruled for a long time over a period of peace and economic stability. If he had a failing, it was that he kicked a lot of cans down the road.
Okay.
And I'm paraphrasing another historian there, but that's very much a thing. Antoninus had a habit of dealing with problems by not dealing with them, and that forced other people to deal with those problems on a much bigger scale much later on.
But it kept his record.
Marcus himself
kept his record pretty clean, though.
Yeah, exactly. No, it made him look really good.
Yeah.
But that was also in response to trying to deal with the troubles that he was dealing with. That wasn't like because he was a passive person that didn't want to deal with those things. It was because he had a very large volume of problems to deal with and couldn't necessarily commit to dealing with them all fully at one time.
So, yeah, I don't know as much about the history of Rome as you do, but when it comes to Antonius Pius, one phrase that keeps coming up is the 5 good emperors. And I'm guessing that this is, the opposite of 5 bad emperors that they might have had. Maybe Nero would be part of that category. But could you explain that phrase, the 5 good emperors, what that means?
The 5 good emperors refers to 5 emperors in succession, who are seen as either one whole dynasty or 2 different kind of parts of a dynasty. But they all ruled over basically what would have been, what was the high point of Roman society, or at least the imperial period of it. So the names, just to give them off quick, are Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus, and then Marcus.
Okay, so Marcus being the last of the 5 good emperors.
Yes, exactly. Do you remember how I think I've said in the past that Marcus ruled over the point where everything started to tip downwards?
Yeah.
This was really just the kind of peak and then tipping downwards of the whole imperial period. And so you have Trajan, who conquers the empire to the point that it is the largest extent that it is ever going to be. It stretches from like the coast of the Atlantic in Western Europe all the way down to the Red Sea, up to the Caspian Sea, and over to the western coast of Africa. Just massively large. And then comes Hadrian, who makes his habit traveling around the empire, making it defendable and holdable. And he kind of sets this limit for his successor Antoninus and gives him the idea in his head. The empire can be no bigger than this. We can't stand to possibly hold it together. And so you must do everything you do to keep it no bigger than this. Do not allow anything more. Which leads to this kind of the period that Marcus is dealing with. And we can get into it in more detail, why all these problems and how they became Marcus's as time went along. But what this was a period of kicking along that tipping of the peak further and further. But what it meant was that Rome's decline came, all that much harder.
Yeah, fair enough. And when it comes to like good emperors, right? Like that phrase "good," does that mean that the things within the empire, like the economy was good, like life for the rich was good? Were they more moral than other emperors? Like, what does that phrase "good" actually mean in reality? Maybe that's difficult to unpack, but
I have a quote for this actually. Okay. And this quote comes from Machiavelli. Cool. It comes on a book called Discourses on Livy.
Okay.
And it says, Titus, Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus, and Marcus had no need of praetorian cohorts, or of countless legions to guard them, but were defended by their own good lives, the goodwill of their subjects, and the attachment of the Senate. What he's trying to say there is that these men lived so well in accordance with the idea of the Roman values of the time that there really wasn't a whole lot. There was nobody trying to assassinate them. There wasn't a whole lot of resistance from the Senate to what they were doing. They lived so well in accordance with those values that they were universally seen by everybody as, the best rulers that there could have been. It certainly looked great for a long time. You know what I mean? Gibbon, who wrote like the 4 or 5 volume, epic of the fall of the Roman Empire, said it was a time when Rome was governed by absolute power under the guidance of wisdom and virtue.
Okay. So that answers the question, and this is a good example, just in terms of like political theory in general, right? I thought it was a very interesting point that you brought up about empire and like the only way to, you could argue that it's not sustainable no matter what, right? But a way to make an empire more sustainable is to have those limits put in place where we're only going to extend to this big, and beyond that is a form of hubris, right?
There's an inherent weakness to it, and it's this. At this time, Germanic tribes were they were approaching the Roman government and saying, look, why don't you just let us join Rome? We'll join your markets and we'll pay taxes and everything. And the Roman government says to the Germanic tribes, well, listen, we're at our extents here. We can't possibly stand to defend anything more than this. And if we add to this, we can't possibly promise that we can defend it all. And so then they leave the negotiations, and the Germanic tribes are sitting there, having just been told that the Romans can't really defend what they have. And then cut to Marcus.
Yeah. Well, anyone who's ever, that's why even though the game of Risk is like kind of boring to play and it takes way too long, there is a valuable lesson that you do learn from playing that game, which is, don't overextend yourself.
Don't overextend yourself, but don't telegraph your weakness either.
True. Yeah. Good point. Yeah, it's all part of the balance, man. Then if you really wanted to get into it, read Sun Tzu's Art of War. That's a very valuable book to read.
It's funny because I was thinking lately that is definitely a book that you and I could do a podcast about. That is right down this kind of alleyway, and I've read it a few times. And the thought that I had most recently about it is that I'd like to read it now that I'm older, because I feel like I would have a much better understanding of a lot of the things that he was trying to tell me.
Yeah, I mean, it's worthwhile. I'm not sure how many episodes do you think we could get out of it. Go chapter by chapter, I suppose. It would be possible.
It's not super long, but it's not short either.
Yeah.
But getting back to the point at hand.
Yeah, getting back to the book that we are reading, let's dive into book 6 here of Meditations. After we do the little historical background stuff, it's kind of a good exercise, in my opinion, to try to distill the message of the chapter down, which is always a bit of a challenge, especially, I guess, as we're getting deeper into this work. Marcus Aurelius kind of tends to write, since the beginning of reading this, this work, we've realized like that it's basically like stream of consciousness, right? But I think it is a good exercise. So have you come up with a phrase that you think encapsulates this chapter?
I've come to realize, and I mean the thought in my head is, it is what it is, so let it be.
Okay.
But I keep saying that, and I keep wondering why I keep coming around to that specific thought, because I'm sure I've said it to you like 1,000 times now as we're talking to this. And the thought in my head is this: I've realized while reading this chapter what the point of Stoicism is, because I didn't really get it before.
Heavy.
Stoicism is trying to marry determinism and free will. What is the point of Stoicism? To create an attitude where whatever the determined path of the universe is also what your will is.
Wild.
It's to merge the two.
Yeah. And
that's what I'm seeing in this chapter.
Yeah, that also merges like the subjectivity and objectivity, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Or
you make it all one.
Yeah,
you choose to make it all one, so it is.
And it's like your God at that point, or something like that. Yeah,
sort of. I guess so. That's like a little bit. That's a little bit kind of abstract. That part of it. But in a very, very real way, if you just choose that whatever is happening right now is what you chose, then the universe is your will, but you're the one bending, not the universe.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's deeper than what I could come up with, so let's go with that.
Okay. I didn't know I'd be the philosophy one today.
Yeah, damn. You out-philosophized me in that section. Now I feel insecure.
Pew, pew.
One idea that I did find, and this obviously ties in with what you're talking about, one idea that I did find very... I guess I find it attractive, but I also think that it's worth unpacking. It's definitely one of those like ideas in philosophy that I think attracts people to it in the first place. One of those ideas that, you can sit around in a dorm room in college and like discuss for hours on end and kind of unmoor yourself from your regular like conception of reality and stuff like that, which is a cool part of philosophy. There's a quote in here in section 31, and it's kind of saying like, I guess that life is a dream, right? And this is an interesting idea. Awaken, return to yourself, now no longer asleep, knowing they were only dreams. Clear-headed again, treat everything around you as a dream. So what do you think about this idea that what appears to be real is only like as significant or only as real as a dream?
So this one is difficult for me, and this is one of the most popular and memorable quotes, I think, from the text. It's one of the ones that comes to mind, but I don't remember my dreams. I rarely even wake up with that feeling that I had a dream. So I don't know what I don't really have a good sense of what it's like to dream. And so in a very real way, to me, that quote is really hard to understand because, like, I live in my waking life, but I don't remember living in my sleeping life. So I can't imagine how to treat one like the other. You know what I mean?
I think you could easily just as easily. Well, I guess you haven't had very many visions either.
No, not really.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean by a vision?
like I don't know, shamanistic vision or whatever. Okay, like you could to get to the point of what he's saying though, like you could say like life is like a play. I think that's equally right.
That's a lot more like Augustus.
Yeah, it's sort of what he's saying, that like, because he does actually like use those analogies as well, like to a performance in a play later on in the chapter, right? The idea that what you're experiencing, what you're seeing, like what you're feeling in your body, all of these things are like one perspective limited by your own senses and your own like ideology or whatever you want to call it, like the way that you view the world, right?
Yeah.
Your morality, your ideology, your like system of belief, whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah. I think there's definitely what I would call a conflation of the self. We confuse ourselves with things.
And what do you think about this idea that like the fact that you can't trust your senses kind of means that like everything around you, it's not actually as real, right?
Okay, so Descartes is super quotable, and I love it, but I am firmly in the camp of Descartes spent way too much time thinking and needed to just go out and have a fucking beer and calm down. And this is a good example of that. Our senses don't deceive us. We use our senses to deceive ourselves.
Okay. True. Yeah. I don't know. It's something that I think about in the shower a lot, right? And I'm glad that you invoked.
That's your own business.
I'm glad that you invoked Descartes here, because I do have a quote from him that relates to this very strongly.
Yeah.
So, whatever I have accepted until now as most true has come to me through my senses, right? But occasionally I have found that they have deceived me. And it is unwise to trust completely those who have deceived us even once.
Are you familiar with game theory?
A little bit.
Rene Descartes would have loved game theory. Now, there was like a group of programmers, and so one of them came up with this idea to create a simple game for very simple programs to play and then have a tournament, create a few different ones and try it. And the game was either you agree and you each get a point, or you disagree and then you get a point and they don't. But you both have to agree to each get the point. And so they created different programs with little strategies, tit for tat. If you disagree me, then I disagree you forever, or forgive. What they ended up finding in the long term is that the most successful strategies were the ones that forgave sometimes, but not all the time.
Okay.
The point being, if your senses deceive you sometimes, it doesn't mean you always have to question them. It just means you have to bear in mind that it's worth questioning them sometimes.
Okay. I think that that's a fair analogy, but I would say no. I would say that your senses are always wrong, because it's just like it's just beams of light like entering your eyes, and your brain is like interpreting that with a bunch of like electronic impulses. It's just one point of view, right? Like a butterfly would disagree with you on what like reality is, right? You're just limited by your senses. Like ultimately, like you never can perceive reality as it is. That's what I think.
So there are things about reality that I can't perceive because they're not in my spectrum. That doesn't mean my interaction with the things around me isn't real.
Real from your perspective.
If it's not real to me, then what's the freaking point? I'm sorry I cut you off there.
No, it's okay. What is the point, man? I don't know. We're going to find out, I guess.
In a Darwinian sense?
Yeah. Or just in a, I don't know, like, yeah, we've talked about it quite a bit on this podcast. Like, what this ties into a very important question. What is the point of life, right? What is the
bitches make money?
Yeah. Well, that's not.
No, I don't really believe that.
It depends if that makes you happy, right? As we've talked about before, Aristotle said that like happiness is the aim of all human life, right? All human endeavors. Like the point of life is to be happy.
This is that to me takes us back to another one of those abstract things. What is happiness?
True. Well, then we won't get into that right now. But let's get into this. Some key concepts that have come out of the reading this week. Some stuff that I think would be interesting to talk about. Important, vital to talk about, maybe not just interesting. This idea that the universe will make use of us no matter what. And there is a quote that Marcus Aurelius brings up from Heraclitus. Even those who sleep are hard at work. I like this a lot. It's basically saying that, like, no matter what you do, like, the universe has a role for you. And this ties in well with the whole Stoic idea of, like, not getting upset that, like, people that we don't like exist, right? Like, whatever that is, fundamentalist Christians, or I don't know, like clowns, carnies. Like, you don't like carnies? I don't know, man. Whatever.
They're a noble folk.
I'm just spitballing here. If you don't like clowns or carnies, right? You have to realize that, like, the clowns in the world, like, if it wasn't for the clowns, then there couldn't be the mathematicians or whatever, right? Like, you need one to have the other. You have to take the good with the bad. So no matter what you do in the world, you are playing a part. You are, like, doing something that is important in, like, the grand scheme of the universe.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I see the point of it as a productive mindset. There's, like, I'm sure that I could, like, nitpick logical things where I could be like, well, what about this or that? But no, as a mindset, it's a really helpful way to approach things.
Like, here's another example. If there were no liars, then people who tell the truth would have no value, right? If everyone just told the truth all the time, like, then you wouldn't be able to say, like, oh, look at these, like, truth-telling people. Like, I want to be like them. You know what I mean? Do
lies in theirself not possibly sometimes have value?
That's what I'm saying. They do have value.
But in and of themselves, without being the thing that makes the truth better. Can individualize have value or add value to the world?
Well, you could definitely argue that, like, society itself couldn't exist without lies.
I would definitely argue that.
Yeah. And another idea that I think would be good to unpack here, be your authentic self and do the work that you are meant to do, right? Which I kind of take as, like, perform your trade to the utmost of your ability. And the idea that, like, this is all that the gods can really ask of you. It's come through in other chapters, but it comes through here. Like, the beekeeper should try to be the best beekeeper that he can possibly be. I don't know. I said the word "bee" a lot.
No, yeah. And we're Canadians, so we could possibly just pace that out by throwing in some A's.
Sure,
but no. I think it's about presence, and you alluded to that. It's about basically, like, if you're a blacksmith and you spend your whole day working as a blacksmith in your head, wishing that you were a painter, then you're not going to be doing a very good job at being a blacksmith.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and it's a really good way, like, a good Stoic way of living in the moment, and not you're letting your envy or your desire for what other people have or what other people are derail you from, like, the important work that you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, for sure. And, like, I guess you don't really have to just accept anything for what it is. You can always strive for better, but the point here is to not envy others. Like, comparison is the worst thing in the Stoic mindset, and it's definitely, like, you got to avoid it.
And yeah, I definitely struggle with this, right? That's why this really resonates with me. I definitely have, like, an inflated sense of, like, self-importance that we've talked about on this podcast quite a bit. And the idea that I'm, like, not living up to my potential, right? That I'm not, like, a great artist or, like a world renowned for my artistic brilliance. I should probably just be fine with the fact that I, like, make a living doing art that I like doing, right? Like, I get to edit videos and shoot videos, and I get to do podcasts, and, like, this is my job and it's fun. So I should just be happy with that. You know what I mean?
I have a similar problem in kind of not measuring up to the like crazy ideas of who I think I should be. But I can also tell you that you're actually, I think in my head, when I think about successful people, you're like one of the most successful people I know,
Well,
like in my peer group.
That should be concerning for me, I guess.
I thought it was a compliment. I'm sorry.
I've been reading too much Epictetus. Epictetus says that you should be suspicious of anyone who thinks that you're special.
So I mean, like, there's definitely reasons to be worried about flattery.
Yeah.
But like,
you should also know how to just take a fucking compliment, right?
Yeah, just do it. Yeah. I'm not asking for anything back, so I mean, just take it.
No, I know, man. And I often think of you when I think about the most intellectual people who I know. So
I appreciate that. Someday it might translate into dollars, hopefully.
Yeah, maybe, man. I don't know. When we all get that job at the philosophy factory, hopefully it will. This concept, I think we've talked like quite a bit about, and it does also relate to Heraclitus. But I do think that it's important just to bring it up here, just because I think that this particular quote is so like eloquent and impactful and beautiful. We find ourselves in a river. Which of the things around us should we value if none of them offer a strong foothold?
This is so similar to the concept of flow in Taoism.
Interesting.
That, like life is a river and kind of whatever's around you is going to be what it's going to be. And you can either try to swim up that river and drown, or you can just be where you are with what you're with.
I think it means that, but it also, I think, means like that you shouldn't attach yourself, or you shouldn't attach your sense of self-worth to impermanent things around you, right? Like, if you attach yourself to your health, eventually you're not going to be healthy, right? That's just how it works. If you attach yourself to your strength, eventually you're not going to be strong. If you attach yourself to your achievements and your, world renown, well, all of that's going to go away eventually, right? So what should you attach yourself with, or what should you attach yourself to? And does this also extend to like worldviews and philosophies, right? This would be like, I would say this to Marcus Aurelius if he was here. If we're not allowed to attach ourselves to anything in the world, then why have you attached yourself to Stoicism?
That's an interesting question about it that I hadn't thought about. As somebody who has hit a lot of the walls that you just alluded to already in my life, before you said it, my answer was going to be that, the best thing you can do is to not attach yourself to anything. It's not that you shouldn't become attached to others or anything like that. But what I mean is that, having been through what I've been through, attaching myself to any achievement or even anything about my body is not really healthy or productive. And so the less things that I think are me, the less things bother me that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it does go back to this thing of just like having pure confidence in yourself, or being self-sufficient and having a sense of self-worth that you just derive from yourself, right? It all has to be in your own heart at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, basically everything has to come from you. The truth is, even though our world is hugely defined by our interaction with the outside, for most humans, most of their world is internal.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more there than you can really see, right? I forget where I was going with that, to be honest.
Well, it is true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it fits in here.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, just if you want to be happy, find a sense of self-worth that's in yourself. Because a lot of the time, if you have like principles that you live by, people are going to think that you're weird, right? And in certain like communities, like you won't be accepted, and it's not going to be like socially beneficial for you all the time to have these like things that you believe in that you won't shut the fuck up about, right?
Yeah, and I mean but it's worth it if something is important to you. I mean, I guess maybe it's not always the most stoic thing to do, but you also don't want to abandon that feeling for when something matters, right?
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Because there'll be times where you want to make sure that acting when it's necessary to act, that you act. This isn't about being passive, I don't think.
No, definitely.
It's about being mindful.
Yeah, definitely not. And this idea as well, I think we should touch on here quickly, even though we've talked about it a bit before, but again, it does come through in this section and quite eloquently. The idea that everything is connected, right? That you're always a part of a much bigger thing, and you can always like take comfort in that. Like you are eternal even in a way, right? And that everything that you do is like linked to something else. Even like the negative things that you do, even the things about yourself that you don't like. These are like important and things that you should treasure, to be honest. The idea that everything is a part of nature, and every part of nature is right in a certain sense, in that it does no evil, right? Like nature cannot inherently do evil. And that means that even the parts of nature that you find abhorrent, things like death, cancer, war, lying, which we talked about earlier, right? All of these things are an essential part of nature that you have to come to terms with eventually.
Yeah. For a lot of people, coming to terms with these sorts of things are the most difficult things they're ever going to do. And so I can't help but wonder if, I mean, that's exactly what Marcus is doing. He was a human being just like anybody else, right? And so we're seeing this stream of consciousness journey into trying to accept these very things himself.
Yeah, I think that that's what this whole book is. That's maybe like what the whole, like that's what every individual's life is. And, going even further, maybe that's just like what the history of like human consciousness is,
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
And it does kind of go back to this idea of like, that's what I've been thinking about a lot lately, right? Like in Heraclitus, this idea of the conflagration of the universe, right? That like the universe is one big fire. It's kind of like all at war with itself all of the time or something like that, right? Like it's not necessarily a calm, passive thing. Like life itself exists because of, I don't know, conflict might not be the right word, but
this
like
is
competition, perhaps.
Competition's a good one. So I think this is similar to a thought that I had recently, which is kind of that a lot of people, when they picture nature, they picture this kind of calm, harmonious thing, where everything gets along and it's all beautiful. That's kind of the paintings and kind of ideas of nature that you get from some people. But as somebody who spends a lot of time in nature, it's not like that. It's chaotic, it's discordant, it's competitive. And the truth is it has nothing to do with good or evil. It has to do with survival and desperation.
Yeah. And everything is like fighting for its existence against everything else.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're the turtle, like, do you get to live today, or are you going to get eaten by what eats turtles?
Sharks, I think.
Hawks?
I don't know. That'd have to be a really big hawk.
I think I've seen a hawk eat a turtle.
Oh, you're thinking of little turtles, I guess. I pictured like a big sea turtle.
Like a snapping turtle or whatever?
Nah, like I pictured have you seen
a Galapagos turtle?
Well, have you seen Finding Nemo? Those big turtles that like swim on the ocean currents?
Yeah, it would take a pretty big bird to eat one of those things.
Yeah.
Maybe like a few birds team up. And
I think Monty Python had a discourse about this.
Oh, really?
Something about a swallow carrying like a... I don't even know it. I don't want to start it anyways.
Okay. Yeah. We only have so much time on the podcast. So if we get into too many Monty Python skits, then we're going to be in trouble here. So
yeah, and there's copyright issues.
Yeah, let's just consider that merely a flesh wound and move on.
Okay.
To Chrysippus, the philosopher who laughed himself to death. He's talked about in the chapter here, and I really enjoyed learning about his life. He's a much more important philosopher in the history of Stoicism, in the history of Greek philosophy and philosophy in general. And I think it would be enlightening to discuss him a little bit here. The most famous thing about him is just how he died. Do you want to break that down here? How he laughed himself to death? Do you know it well enough to do that?
I sort of do. I can give a run through, but
Sure.
honestly, I don't remember the joke or the setup. I just know that he made a joke about a donkey, and he laughed really, really long about it.
Okay, I'll break it down here. It was during the Olympics, actually, which kind of comes full circle because he was an Olympic runner. That's like the first thing that he ever strived to do in his life. So later in his life, during the Olympics, he was at his house and he noticed that a donkey came up to one of his fig trees and started eating figs. And then he joked to someone who he was there with that, the donkey's eating figs. Why don't you bring it some wine to wash it down? And that was so funny to him that he laughed himself to death.
It's not that funny, so I have to wonder if there was something wrong with him. He was sick and he was going to die anyways, and he just happened to die when he told a really bad joke.
Yeah, maybe he had just had too much wine.
There's a little bit of that too, I guess. Laughing yourself to death sounds exhausting.
It sounds like one of the best ways to go.
Sort of. It would be really tiring, but yeah, laughing physically is a lot of work for your body. If you're doing it hard.
You can just choose to laugh yourself to death, despite what you're dying of, right?
What?
Well, think about it. If someone jumps on you and starts stabbing you in the chest, and you know that you're gonna die, you could just start hilariously.
Yeah, but
laughing.
I didn't die by laughing. I died by knife.
Hey, man, it's up to you. At the end of the day, how will people remember? Right? Maybe someone in a podcast 3,000 years later will talk about Devin, the guy who laughed himself to death. They won't mention the knife thing.
Maybe we'll see. I guess.
Yeah. Chrysippus, though, did a lot of other stuff other than that. He wrote over 700 books of philosophy, which shows a few things about him. It shows that he was very disciplined, and I don't know, maybe that he was some type of savant or weirdo or something. I don't know who writes 700 books of philosophy.
When did he sleep?
I guess that they say that he wrote 500 lines a day or something like that. So you could do that and then sleep, right? As long as you're committed. Yeah. He turned down a lot of invitations from important people, kings, and all of this, so that he could focus on it, and rarely went to social gatherings. So there's probably your answer. So he did sleep, but didn't do much else other than write and deliver lectures. He wrote on things such as determinism, ethics, and logic. He was a big contributor to philosophy of logic, stuff like the liar paradox. He wrote multiple volumes just on that kind of logical paradox. The best way to talk about that, or just the simplest form of the liar paradox. This sentence is false. You see why that's a paradox, right?
Yeah, because the sentence is telling the truth about itself, which means if it's false, it's telling the truth.
Right. Yeah. It's the interrelation between X and Y, X equals Y, but then X doesn't. X is not true, and therefore Y isn't true. But then, it kind of breaks your brain, right? And that's why it's in that Star Trek episode is something that would break a computer. This is kind of important, though, right? It seems goofy and to write hundreds of volumes and have this is something that's been debated, right, ever since his time. That people still I went and read some of them, didn't read the entire essays, read the abstracts of some essays and stuff, man. People are still arguing about this, right? And it's
the physical reaction I can see in your body while you're talking about reading those things, it just speaks so much to how frustrating it was for you, dude. And I'm not even ever going to go close to that stuff now that I see that. You've sufficiently scared me away.
It's an audio medium, guys, but like my eyes hurt, like just from, you can literally see it on my face. I'm in pain thinking about this. But it does sort of point out like a problem, with just language itself, right? So that's something to consider. Maybe it goes back to that thing about like your conception of the universe is only goes so far, right? If even like language can't really explain what's going on.
I mean, language is a means of communicating. It was designed as a means of communicating, not as a way of describing the world accurately. Mm-hmm. That's what mathematics is for.
Ah, yes, indeed. True. In terms of his other achievements, he was the third head of the Stoic school. So after Zeno, who we've talked about, you had Cleanthes, who kind of condensed the works of Zeno, kept them alive, and then Chrysippus took up the torch from there. He was the defender of Stoicism in the Academy of Athens. Like there were a lot of other, the Neoplatonists or whatever the fuck they call them, people who followed Plato, people who followed Aristotle more, people who followed Socrates more. All of these, like Greek philosophy wasn't just like one big hug, like people were competing with each other. They were putting out rap disses against each other and stuff like that. He was
I was about to say poetry slams.
Poetry slams. Yeah, exactly. He was in fact, Epictetus said of Chrysippus that if Chrysippus had been a good writer, then all of the people who understand him would have nothing to brag about.
Okay.
So
that makes me curious.
Yeah, that makes you epic curious. That's not the same. I don't know. That was dumb. Moving on. He was a prolific lecturer. This is something that I find very intriguing about him. Not only did he lecture in the university, but he took it to the public, right? And did these like big public lectures where he would get everyday people involved in philosophy.
Yeah.
And I think that another really important thing about his life is that he embodied the virtues of Stoicism, right? And one of those things is to have but not want, and to enjoy without needing, right? To enjoy your life, but not get so attached to the things, like to drink the wine, right? But not be completely devastated if someone takes your wine away, or if like the harvest isn't good that year, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And to not spend all your time discussing what it means to be a good man, just be one. I think that he embodies this as well.
Yeah.
Like what he thinks a good person is, well, it's somebody who is disciplined, who spends a lot of time on philosophy, someone who believes it's important to have virtues, and somebody who takes this to the masses instead of it being kind of a, elitist idea.
It's very much also like the expression of like, don't talk the walk, walk the walk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got to do both, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. You good on that?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Sweet. Let's get into a couple of quotes here, because I'm starting to run out of coffee. So this one I honestly love. The best revenge is not to be like that, from section 6. Pretty self-explanatory, but with like politics and stuff like that, if there is like a person who you don't like even someone within your own family, when you get into like the position of power, or just maybe influence within the family, or just like a certain age, instead of trying to have this idea of like how I'm going to get revenge on this person, the best revenge is just be better than they were, right? And if you ever do get your hands on like the power that they had, use it in a better way.
If my study of Scottish history has taught me anything, it's that the best revenge is to kill their entire family all at once.
Oh, well, Marcus Aurelius
But
disagrees.
maybe that's not very stoic.
Yeah, I don't know. That seems to lead to more problems, right? Like then other people are going to come for your
definitely
family
does. Yeah,
like
no,
that.
I'm just drawing out a laugh.
An infinite aggression. Yeah. No, I get it. Yeah. And this one too. Not to assume it's impossible because you find it hard, but to recognize that if it is humanly possible, you can do it too. This is one of the most famous quotes from the entire book. What do you make of that?
It feels very Jedi to me. That's just the thought that pops into my head. It feels like something you'd hear from a Jedi.
Yeah, like Yoda would say that when you're trying to like lift the X-wing or whatever.
Yeah.
I think it is true though, isn't it? I mean,
I would say like we all have different aptitudes and skills and stuff like that. But I mean, like I want to say that it has its limitations, but it's essentially true. Yeah.
I mean, we're not going to be Einstein. Like, I'm never going to be Einstein. I can read theoretical physics all day. I'm not going to understand it, right?
Yeah, exactly. It almost clashes with the idea that you are who you are and you kind of need to be good with that.
Yeah, I think it does in a way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But it's also one of those quotable things that can be really inspiring. And I mean, I think it's a little bit less about who you are, and maybe this one ties to achievement really well, which is why it resonates with people, right?
Yeah, achievement.
You can put it on the wall in your office.
Yeah, achievement, but also like patience.
Yeah.
So you maybe should expect that you'll be able to like achieve all of the things that you want, but you shouldn't expect that that's going to happen overnight, and you shouldn't expect that that's going to happen without a great deal of like, I don't know, struggle, maybe suffering, even anything. Like if you look at any famous person or any like successful person, right? They gave up something to have that success. All right, let's get into the final section here, arguably the whole point of this podcast, because if we didn't apply any of this stuff to our lives, it would probably be a big waste of time. So let's get into some lessons here. You okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely. No, okay. I hate learning. I hate lessons.
No,
I never want to learn stuff.
I don't want to apply this to my life. I don't want to improve myself.
Yeah, exactly. No, of course. Let's move along.
I'm happy to be miserable.
That's exactly like the liar paradox.
Hey, there you go.
I'm happy to be miserable.
Yeah. I'm coming up with my own. I'm going to write 100 pages.
Jared Poirier, philosophizer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. So are there any things in your life that you cling to, attach your self-worth to, that are impermanent, unimportant, or beyond your control?
All things are impermanent.
Not the logos, my friend.
Yeah, I don't really get the logos still, so I don't know what to say about that. Okay.
The consciousness of the universe itself is permanent, no?
What is the consciousness of the universe? That's really abstract to me, and I don't understand it. It's one of these things that I just have to accept about this whole philosophy.
Yeah. Well, this is the idea of the logos, right? That you like any consciousness that you have is not like a self-contained unit of consciousness. It's just that you are participating in the overall shared consciousness of everything.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the idea. It's just weird, and I don't get it.
Well, you talked about it yourself earlier with the whole how like fate, like the idea of fate and how like determinism and all of that is like related to each other, right?
Oh, I see what they're trying to do, but when we start talking about abstract things like the consciousness of the universe, I can't really picture it.
Like
fair. I don't. If we talk about it being permanent, I don't really know what that means per se. Like once we get into things that are kind of godlike or religion-like, then it's all kind of magic to me.
Do you think that you have your own private consciousness and that no one else has access to it? Like, do you really think that? How is it possible?
So, like, I don't understand what you're asking me. How am I tied to other people in some kind of unified consciousness? I don't get that.
I don't know. It just seems like the Occam's razor type of thing, right? Is it like simpler to believe that there's one universal consciousness and everybody has access to it, or that each individual person somehow is able to like conjure a consciousness inside their own head completely separate from everybody else? I just find that, like, according to like the principles of like Occam's razor, that the first one is just like more valid, more true. It just makes more sense to me personally. But
I think that's
could be
an
wrong.
interesting application of Occam's razor, given that we all do have separate consciousnesses. We can't read each other's minds. We think individually of each other. Like, it ignores the circumstances. It's like, in a philosophical sense on paper, that's how you apply Occam's razor to it. But if you look at the actual world, it doesn't speak to that truth.
Okay, so maybe let's erase the word impermanent from this then. Things that are unimportant beyond your control that you attach your self-worth to. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, me too.
So everything's beyond your control. That's the truth of it. You can't really control like very, very much at all. So, I mean,
you can control your own mindset. As I said earlier, if you're getting stabbed to death, you can start laughing.
But you shouldn't be attached to your mindset either.
You can control your thoughts. You can control your response to things.
Sort of, yeah. Yeah.
So that's what you should worry about. I think a big thing for me is like letting go of some of that, like letting go of that's been like a big exercise of this podcast for me, right? Is like letting go of some of those things that I wish that I did have. I don't even wish that I did have control over, right? I just don't, and I just need to accept it, right? Like, I don't know, giant geopolitical events and shit like that, right?
Yeah. Like, and I mean, that is a huge concern for people today, just because it's kind of everywhere in our lives right now. But I mean, when you think about it, you know, you got to just boil this down to the more like truly universal things of, you know, just like the problems that you encounter in your life with friends or family, or, you know, your kind of difficulties at work or anything like that, you know, like that's kind of that's the real stuff of life that you want to apply this to, because that's where you have to make those difficult choices that really show who you are.
Yeah, and it ties into what you were saying at like the top of the podcast. Like, your biggest takeaway from this is that you shouldn't be upset with events and things like that happen, and kind of you should try to view it as like something that you yourself wanted or whatever, right? Like, it's so well, it's a path.
That's something I think they're trying to do, and I think there's some really problematic elements to it, but it has its values.
Wow, we have 6 more episodes to get to the bottom of it. So. Yeah, this one I think is important too. Marcus Aurelius talks about a good analogy here. Like, you don't sit around and like get upset that you're not 8 feet tall and, you know, like 400 pounds of pure bicep, right? You accept limitations on your body. And yet you don't necessarily accept other limitations, like the limitation on your time. A lot of people are upset that they're going to die, for instance, right?
Yeah, that's weird to me, but I get it.
Yeah. So the question that I wrote down here, are there limits on your achievements, activities, power that you cannot accept?
I think I made it clear earlier, you know, in the phase of life that I'm in, it's literally entirely about accepting the fact that nothing is going to be what I wanted it to be. That is really the stuff of life, man. Yeah. And that's what this philosophy is for. It's for finding your way through stuff like that.
Yeah. And kind of a obvious answer to this question, but would you be happier if you did accept those limitations?
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And can you?
I don't know.
Oh, it's a process.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is for me as well. And this one I really like. I guess this might be the most important part of the entire podcast. at least this episode. Are you being impatient with yourself, others, or the universe?
Screw that. I'm already almost halfway through my damn life. I'm not being impatient. I want some good shit now.
Yeah, I guess you need it in one lump sum, right? Everything.
I just want it to come eventually.
You want it eventually now?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that,
eventually now.
Yeah. In all seriousness, I think that I am very, like, to an irrational degree, I think that I'm kind of impatient. I think that, like, life has a lot of good things in store for me. I think that I already have a lot of good things in life, and yet I do find myself, like, getting impatient with, like, little aspects of things that I should just kind of enjoy, right? In that way that it said, I think it was Heraclitus, like that, you just need to try to be like the best at your trade that you can be, right? And accept all of those little parts. Like if you're trying to be the best carpenter and your like saw blade gets dull and you have to sharpen it, don't sit there and be like, oh, I gotta sharpen this stupid blade. Like enjoy the ride, enjoy the experience, right?
Yeah, and I mean it's a wonderful idea, and it's like a value you try to live, but man, that one can be so hard.
Just having patience,
just being patient and being happy with everything the way it is. That's the hardest part of all of this.
Even the shitty parts.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
Yeah, even when, Premiere Pro, that's the software that I edit, even when it's like crashing, when I need to get an edit done, I should still be like, well, this is all part of the process, and I should try to enjoy the fact that Premiere Pro is crashing somehow.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's like, that's got to be hard. You know what I mean?
It is hard. Well,
or like,
yeah.
Put yourself in Marcus's shoes, like imagine sitting there and saying, well, yeah, my wife is dead.
Mm-hmm. Much worse than Premiere Pro.
That. That's great. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you could argue that your wife dying is worse than Premiere Pro crashing. You could argue that.
Well, and I mean, listen, problems don't fall on a scale of difficulty. All I'm saying is like, just imagine what I'm saying is extend the principle, right?
Yeah.
Extend the principle to other possibilities and places. And it's like, well, try to be happy about that. Or I don't know, like your house burning down. Well, it's all part of the process. And I mean, listen, I had a fire at my house. And did I get to have like an insurance thing and get a whole bunch of new stuff and a fixed up house? Yeah, sure. Was dealing with the insurance company worth any of that? No.
Yeah.
No, it was not. It was literally traumatic after a year of it.
Yeah. But maybe it made you stronger in the long run, and then like the next big or other crises that you face in your life are going to pale in comparison. That's kind of like the lesson, I suppose.
I have to hope it's not going to get worse.
Yeah, well, even if it does, you'll be stronger, man. That's the thing.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think so, but we'll see. Only time will tell. You want to give these people some homework?
Yes. Pick a Stoic philosopher and read a few paragraphs of their work. The Art of Living by Epictetus, Letters from a Stoic by Seneca.
Yeah, those are two examples that are really easy to find. You can find like full PDFs of these online. I'm currently reading through The Art of Living by Epictetus, and it is amazing. It's so like just simple, easy to digest paragraphs of wisdom, essentially, that will just make your life better. Yeah, I'll start texting you some like transcendent parts as I read them. Some passages that are really resonating with me. I'll text them to you, and I think
since you mentioned it, I'll take a look myself too.
Sure, yeah. It's quite short and quite easy to wrap your head around. It's not like it's not Hegel, you know what I mean? It's not Chrysippus, I guess, is a more appropriate example.
Yeah, it's not like Kant or anything like that.
No, and it's not like 100-page essay about the liar paradox or whatever type of horrible thing. So
wouldn't be the worst thing, honestly, but it would be really tough to digest.
Yeah, and not that much fun and pretty annoying.
That's fair. Yeah, right. You didn't look happy about it. I almost forgot there for a second.
All right, here we go. I drop a quote on you guys, and we'll catch up with you next week. Okay, here from Seneca. Life is like a play. It's not the length, but the excellence of the acting that matters.